How did a wild wolf pack treat this pregnant woman lost in Alaska? Sarah was 9 months pregnant when her truck died in a blizzard. Alone and freezing, she faced a pack of wolves that changed her life forever. The nightmare began with a sharp, metallic clank that echoed through the frozen cabin of Sarah's 2012 Chevy Silverado. She called this truck Old Reliable, but tonight it had failed her. She turned the key again, her knuckles white against the plastic. Click, click, click. The battery was dead. Silence followed, a silence so heavy it felt like a physical weight. Outside, the Alaskan wilderness was disappearing under a mountain of white. The wind didn't just blow, it screamed, a high-pitched banshee wail that shook the truck's frame. Sarah looked at the dashboard clock. 11:45 p.m. She was 30 miles from the nearest town of Talkeetna. Her husband, Jack, a Marine veteran and state trooper, was out on his own rescue mission, unaware that his wife was now the one in danger. Suddenly, a white-hot bolt of pain ripped through Sarah's abdomen. She gasped, grabbing the steering wheel. This wasn't a Braxton Hicks contraction. This was the real thing. 2 weeks early, the heater was already blowing cold air. She knew the Alaskan law. If you stay in a dead vehicle during a blizzard, you're sitting in a coffin. She grabbed her emergency bag and her father's old silver Zippo. With every ounce of strength, she pushed the door open into the waist-deep snow. The cold hit her like a sledgehammer. She had to move, or she and her baby would be frozen statues by dawn. Sarah stumbled toward the dark tree line, each step a monumental struggle. The wind whipped snow into her eyes, blinding her. She found a small hollow beneath an uprooted spruce tree, a tiny pocket of stillness in the chaos. She collapsed, her breath coming in ragged gas. For a moment, she let her head rest against the rough bark. She thought of her warm living room, the smell of Jack's tobacco, and the half-finished nursery waiting at home. She felt a dangerous sense of peace. Just a small nap, she whispered to herself. But she knew that in Alaska, a nap in the snow is a nap you never wake up from. But as her eyes began to close, a sound from the darkness made her heart stop. A low, vibrating growl, deeper than the wind, vibrated through the spruce needles. Sarah's eyes snapped open. At first, she saw nothing but white. Then they appeared. One by one, pairs of glowing yellow eyes emerged from the shadows. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She counted them. 10, 12, a whole pack. At the center stood a massive silver-gray wolf, the alpha female. She was a ghost of the forest, her fur matted with ice. Sarah's hand flew to her father's Zippo. She flicked it once, twice. A tiny orange flame sputtered to life. She held it out like a holy relic. "Stay back," she cried, but her voice was a thin reed in the storm. The alpha wolf didn't snarl. She didn't crouch to spring. Instead, she walked forward with a slow, regal grace. She stopped inches from Sarah, her hot breath smelling of pine and wild earth. The wolf tilted her head, her yellow eyes fixed on Sarah's swollen belly. She let out a soft huff, a sound that wasn't a threat, but an acknowledgement. Then the unthinkable happened. The alpha wolf didn't attack. She lay down. She curled her massive, warm body right against Sarah's shivering side. One by one, the rest of the pack followed. They formed a living, breathing wall of fur around her. The warmth was instant and overwhelming. It was like being wrapped in a 1,000-pound heated blanket. Sarah felt the feeling return to her frozen toes. She looked at the alpha, who rested her heavy head on Sarah's thigh. There was a strange, ancient intelligence in those eyes. Sarah realized these weren't monsters. They were protectors. She reached out her hand, her fingers sinking deep into the silver coat. In that frozen forest, the barrier between human and animal vanished. She was no longer a lost traveler. She was a mother under the protection of the pack. But as the warmth seeped into her bones, the contractions returned with a vengeance. The baby was coming, and the spruce hollow was no place for a birth. The pack moved as one. The alpha stood and gently nudged Sarah's shoulder, urging her to get up. Sarah leaned her weight on the wolf's powerful back, using her as a living crutch. They moved slowly through the white abyss, a strange procession of gray ghosts and one terrified woman. Sarah felt a strange calm. She wasn't alone. She was part of something much older than the storm. You won't believe the sacrifice the Alpha made when the very roof above them began to crumble. They reached a small granite cave high on a ridge. Inside it was dry and smelled of dry earth. The pack settled at the entrance, facing the wind, their bodies forming a barrier against the drifting snow. Sarah lay on the ground, her body racked with labor pains. The hours blurred into a haze of pain and cold. Sarah used her Zippo to light a small pile of dry moss and twigs the wolves had, incredibly, brought in. The tiny flame danced on the stone walls. But as the cave warmed up, the frost holding the rocks together began to melt. A deep, bone-chilling crack echoed from the ceiling. The alpha wolf leaped to her feet, her ears pinned back. She let out a sharp, commanding bark. The younger wolf scrambled out, but Sarah was pinned by a massive contraction. She couldn't move. She looked up and saw a 300-pound boulder beginning to shift. It was aimed directly at her. "No!" she screamed. In a flash of silver fur, the alpha wolf didn't run for the exit. She lunged at Sarah. With a powerful, muscular shove, she knocked Sarah across the cave floor. A split second later, the boulder crashed down. The sound was like a cannon shot. Dust and grit filled the air. Sarah coughed, her heart in her throat. She looked back and gasped in horror. The alpha wolf was trapped. The edge of the stone had caught her hind leg, pinning her to the cave floor. Sarah dragged herself over, tears streaming down her face. "You saved me," she sobbed, her hands shaking as she touched the wolf's head. The alpha didn't whimper. She looked at Sarah with steady gold eyes and let out a low huff, then looked pointedly at Sarah's belly. She was telling her to finish what she started. The baby was arriving. Alone in the dim light of a dying Zippo, Sarah gave one final, agonizing push. The sound of a tiny, high-pitched cry filled the cave, drowning out the wind. It was her daughter. Sarah's hands were clumsy with exhaustion, but she held the infant to her chest. Then the alpha wolf leaned over. With the precision of a surgeon, she gently bit through the umbilical cord. She began to lick the baby clean, her rough tongue warm against the newborn's skin. Sarah watched breathless as the fiercest predator in Alaska became a midwife. She named her daughter Faith. The storm finally broke. The first light of a frozen dawn touched the snow outside. Sarah lay there, exhausted, one hand on her baby and the other on the trapped alpha wolf. She felt a profound sense of victory. They had survived the night. They had beaten the cold. But as the sun rose, a new shadow appeared at the cave's mouth, a shadow that didn't have the mercy of the pack. For a few minutes, the world was silent and perfect. Sarah watched her daughter's tiny chest rise and fall. The alpha wolf rested her head on the stone, her breathing heavy but stable. Sarah felt a deep, spiritual connection to the animal. "We made it," she whispered. She thought the worst was behind them. She didn't know that the scent of birth had traveled far on the wind, attracting something much darker than a wolf. Stay with me, because the most dangerous predator in the north was about to turn this miracle into a nightmare. The silence was shattered by a sound that made Sarah's skin crawl. A high-pitched, metallic scream. It was a mountain lion, a massive ghost cat that had been tracking Sarah's scent for miles. It stood at the cave entrance, its muscles rippling under tan fur. It was hungry, desperate, and saw Sarah and her baby as an easy meal. The wolf pack erupted. The male wolves bared their teeth, their growls sounding like revving chainsaws. But the mountain lion was a specialist. He leapt from a ledge, his claws extended, aiming straight for the center of the cave. The injured alpha wolf, still pinned by the rock, couldn't move, but she let out a roar that shook the stone walls. She snapped at the air, her teeth inches from the cat's throat. The other wolves piled on, a whirlwind of gray and tan fur. It was a brutal, primeval struggle. Sarah huddled in the corner, shielding Faith with her body. She saw the mountain lion's claws rake across a younger wolf's flank. Suddenly, a thunderous bang echoed through the valley. Then another. A snowmobile roared into the clearing, its headlight cutting through the morning mist like a lighthouse. A man in a tan state trooper jacket jumped off before the machine even stopped. It was Jack. He had been tracking the wolf prints for 5 hours, praying they led to his wife and not a tragedy. He saw the mountain lion lunging at the cave and fired his service weapon into the air. The cat, seeing the man in the light, hissed one last time and vanished into the timber like a shadow. Jack ran into the cave, his gun drawn. He saw the wolves. He saw the blood. He saw his wife. He raised his pistol at the alpha wolf, who was still pinned and snarling. "Jack, no!" Sarah screamed. "They saved us! They are the only reason we are alive!" Jack froze. He looked at the silver wolf, then at the boulder, then at the tiny baby in Sarah's arms. He saw the umbilical cord. He saw the way the pack stood back to let him pass. He lowered his gun, his knees hitting the dirt. He wept as he pulled Sarah and Faith into his arms. "I've got you," he sobbed. "I've got you both." He looked at the alpha wolf, whose eyes were now closing from exhaustion. He didn't see a beast. He saw a hero. He used his emergency radio to call for a heavy rescue team, not just for his wife, but for the animal that had given everything to protect her. The rescue was a blur of activity. 2 helicopters landed on the ridge. Paramedics treated Sarah and Faith for mild hypothermia. They were remarkably healthy, thanks to the heat of the pack. A second team of wildlife vets arrived to lift the boulder. They treated the alpha's leg and shoulder right there on the cave floor. As Sarah was being lifted into the medevac, she looked down and saw the alpha wolf standing on 3 legs, surrounded by her pack. The wolf gave one short, sharp howl. A goodbye. But the real mystery remained. Why did they do it? The answer was hidden in a secret act of kindness from months ago. A month later, after the snow had turned to slush and the first green shoots of spring appeared, Jack and Sarah returned to the spot where the Chevy had died. Jack wanted to retrieve some gear, but Sarah wanted to find something else. As they walked through the woods, Sarah pointed to a thicket of willow trees. There, standing in the dappled sunlight, was a mother deer, a doe, with a strange, jagged scar on her back leg. Beside her, a healthy fawn was testing its legs. Jack watched in silence as Sarah smiled. He remembered then. 3 months before the blizzard, Sarah had been hiking near their ranch. She had found this same deer with its leg caught in a hunter's illegal wire snare. The animal was exhausted and near death. Most people would have called animal control or walked away. But Sarah had spent 3 hours in the rain, using her father's Zippo to heat the wire until it was soft enough to cut with her pocket tool. She had stayed with the deer until it could stand. Jack realized the truth in that moment. In the wild, there is a law of return that humans often forget. The mother deer had stayed near Sarah on the night of the storm. The scent of the deer had drawn the wolves. But the wolves didn't come to kill. They had been called by the spirit of the forest. They recognized Sarah's scent, not as a predator, but as a life giver. Because Sarah had shown mercy to one mother, the forest had sent its fiercest protectors to show mercy to her. The alpha wolf didn't stay in the deep woods. She and her pack moved their territory to the hills surrounding Jack and Sarah's ranch. They became the silent guardians of the valley. Every night at 8 p.m., the silver wolf sits on the ridge overlooking the nursery window. She lets out a long, melodic howl. Sarah often stands at the window with Faith in her arms. She knows that we are all connected in a great, invisible web of kindness. This story isn't just about a woman and a wolf. It's about the soul of the world. It's about the fact that no act of compassion, no matter how small, is ever truly lost. Today, Faith is a toddler with a strange, fearless love for the woods. Sarah often finds her sitting by the porch, staring into the trees. One evening, Sarah looked out and saw a flash of silver fur. The old alpha wolf, now gray around the muzzle and limping slightly, walked right up to the porch. She sniffed Faith's hair, gave a single lick to the girl's hand, and vanished back into the shadows. It was a blessing, a promise kept across the years. Sarah still carries her father's Zippo. It's scratched and dented, but it's a reminder of the fire that stayed lit when the world went dark. She knows that as long as we carry that fire of kindness within us, we are never truly alone. The story of the wolf mother of Talkeetna became a legend. It reminds us that there is a wild grace in this world that defies logic. It reminds us that the animals we fear might just be the ones sent to save us. Sometimes when the wind howls around their cabin, Sarah doesn't feel afraid. She knows her protectors are out there, patrolling the borders of her world, And she knows that one day Faith will tell this story to her own children. And the flame of the Zippo will never, ever go out. If this story touched your soul, please leave a comment below. We believe that every act of kindness creates a miracle, and we want to hear your stories of hope. Don't stop here. Click on the next video to see more incredible rescues that prove the world is still full of light. Thank you for being part of our family today. Stay kind, and we'll see you in the next one.